Well, I have the honor of introducing Victor Fishman.
Indeed,
he has been on our board since I've started last year.
That's
and
exactly
so
right.
he is moderating the next panel. He is the executive director of the Texas Research Alliance. He has served at the organizational interface of industry, government, and academia. Prior to the Texas Research Alliance, he served as associate vice president for the applied research at the University of Texas in Dallas. Dr. Fishman has held significant industry leadership positions in pharmaceuticals, environmental monitoring, technology transfer, and new technology development and commercialization. And he also served in the U.S. Army separately after separating after 6 years as the rank of captain. So I'd like to welcome Victor, Dr. Victor Fishman. Hi, Victor. Oh, I think you're on mute, sir.
Check and see if you're on unmute. We don't hear you. We see you, but we don't hear you, Victor. So check and see if you're. Oh, there we go.
I think we're good.
Okay, welcome.
Good morning.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the wonderful program that you've put together, not only this year but last year, and what's going to happen in the fall as well. And we're very excited to have our panel with us this morning, where we're going to talk about advanced air mobility. So I think my colleagues are on. I see Lucas here. I think Steve Schmidt and Michael Reed are here. So panelists, thank you very much. And we've got a lot to talk about, so I'd like to get started if we could. So let me just give a warm welcome today to everyone who's joining us for today's panel discussion. Now, our overarching theme is advanced air mobility, challenges, opportunities, and progress. Our panel is comprised of leaders who have come to share their insights and experience pertaining to leading innovation and technologies in advanced mobility. So without further delay, I'd like to welcome our panelists. We look forward to a lively and enlightening dialogue over the next hour. So Steve, Michael, and Luke, let me pass it to you for just a minute and let you introduce yourself. Steve, would you please start?
Sure, be happy to. Thank you very much. I'll just start out. I started my career working for the U.S. Air Force, doing flight tests out at Edwards Air Force Base, anywhere from bombers to fighters to weapon development, cruise missiles, that type of thing. Then I went to Rockwell International. I worked on the space shuttle. I worked on the B-1. I worked on X-31. Some various X airplanes and other types of programs. Then I went back to the government, went back and worked for NASA. And the first program work there was I managed the SR-71 program for NASA, but I also worked on the Columbia Investigation Board. I worked on the International Space Station Management Task Force. I was also on a presidential commission for U.S. space policy. So I worked for the administrator for about 3 years, and then I wound up going back out to Edwards Air Force Base, where we did a lot of testing with various X airplanes, where I was director of safety and also for strategic planning while I was there.
Steve, thank you so much. And that's Steve Schmidt, NASA executive, joining us from Arizona. And now we've got Michael Reed, okay, the founder and CEO of Skybase, joining us from New Zealand. A very early good morning to you, Michael.
Thanks very much, Victor. It's great to be here. It's a great honour. And yes, it is a bit of an early morning, but happy to support. Just a little bit about my background. I was a pilot in the Royal Australian Air Force for nearly 14 years. Served alongside US airmen in conflict zones, several areas around the world. And then I was brought to New Zealand to be chief test pilot at Martin Jetpack. And then after a couple of years there, started my own company, Skybase, with the vision to unlock aviation's full potential. And we've been working over the last few years to turn aeroplanes into drones. So we make an upgrade kit and we take an existing aircraft and then we upgrade that with various capabilities to make it fly like a drone. And the I guess the usage for that we're targeting at the moment is to spray locusts in East Africa early next year, which you can only do at night time at low level if it's unmanned, because it's obviously too dangerous to do with a human pilot on board and have a big impact on society. So we've got a lot of experience in both manned and unmanned aviation, and working closely with regulators.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And another early riser from California, Luke Fischer with Joby Aviation. Luke, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, good morning, and it's an honor to be on the panel. Yeah, slightly early morning. I think it'll be a sunny day here in California, but we'll see in a little bit. Yeah, my background, so I spent 16 years active duty as an Army aviator here, most of that time in the special operations field. And then I made the choice to join Uber Elevate, and I was there for about 2 years. That's the quote unquote flying car business that Uber had started in 2016 with the Uber Elevate white paper. I led flight operations for 2 years there, so that involved working hand in hand with our electric aircraft partners like Joby Aviation and a handful of others. Then also led our small drone initiative. Then I switched gears over to Joby Aviation. We've got the privilege to work with a phenomenal group of people building the aircraft you see over my shoulder here as the government operations lead. And I think we'll talk a little bit about what that means as it pertains to Joby, but very excited to be here. Thanks.
Super. Thank you all very much. And I am very pleased to be one of America's Future Series volunteers and to be able to get to meet, know, and work you and learn a lot about advanced aviation. So what I'd like to do is just set a couple of structural ground rules here, and we'll ask each of our panelists a couple of questions that I think will be important to our attendees, and hopefully we'll get discussion across the panel on these topics. Okay, and at the end of the session, we'll have a time for all of our panelists to give their closing comments. And so with that, I'd like to start with Steve. Steve, as a retired NASA executive, we know that NASA has played a significant role in the development of UAVs. Can you share a bit about this and how NASA has been central to this effort?
Sure, be more than happy to. NASA's been involved in UAVs for well over 40 years. And anywhere from a fleet to a range of full scale type aircraft, and we've been working from anything from full scale solar powered versions to using electric motors or propellers of types, and they've been using included remote sensing for Earth science studies and imaging for agricultural type purposes, storms and telecommunications. So it's been going on for quite some time, and the recent ones have been like the Ingenuity Mars helicopter. You got an RPV on a different planet that's been able to fly. That's the first time that's ever been done. They're working on things like urgent medical transport to potentially provide rapid medical transportation for bloods and organs and perishable medical supplies, things of that nature. And also a recent one that they've ended was UAS integration into the national airspace. So the idea is to look at various detect and avoid concepts, to look at various commands and controls, to system integration, to operations. It's anywhere. It's been anything from low and slow to very high and fast. They've worked on things from hypersonic Mach 10 vehicles that have been autonomous, from Global Hawks to Predators to all types of airplanes that have been remotely piloted. So, and then some vehicles that have been completely autonomous. So it's been going on for quite a while. There's been a lot of experience that NASA's been involved with. Even the ERAS program, which was an environmental research aircraft and sensor technology program that they had. And it showed that they were able to fly a solar powered airplane about 98,000 feet. So that's the whole idea of that, was to be able to fly all day while it's charging batteries and fly all night on the batteries, and theoretically somewhat unlimited time of flight. So there have been, we've worked with a lot of various companies to various parts of DoD, DARPA, that type of thing, and developing even autonomous space vehicles. So it's the area that we've been involved with is very broad, and it's not very narrow scope, but it's been all over the map. But looking at developing various technologies in the UAV world.
Steve, thank you so much. One of the things that came up in the fireside chat earlier was the need to build out our infrastructure for advanced air mobility, and especially urban air mobility. And I know that NASA is playing a lead role in that, with partnerships with municipalities and state entities in order to see how do they get the need and the infrastructure built into their transportation innovation program. So NASA plays a key role here for that kind of thing. So Michael, we know that the world has gotten much more connected and competitive in the last 50 years. Important technology advances are being developed across the globe. We've talked about near-peer competitors. I think our audience would like your thoughts on if the US is likely to be the leader in autonomous aviation, even if certain technologies are developed and certified outside of the USA. And this is a wonderful follow-on discussion to our fireside chat earlier. Michael, thank you.
Yeah. A great question there, Victor. And in a forum like America's Got Future, the answer is preordained. Of course, America is the future, and I'm not just saying that, to be kind. It really is, from an outsider's perspective, something that we all look very closely at what's happening in the US, because it's been the centre of aviation and unmanned aviation innovation since the beginning. And all of the things that Steve talked about there are examples, beautiful examples of that. The advantage that the US has is unparalleled anywhere in the world, and the ecosystem of people. And on top of that, you've obviously got, using the FAA is pretty much the proxy for the world regulator. People outside the US don't typically want to recognize that, but it is the truth, because if you are commercializing a product outside of the US, if you don't go and consider what happens under the FARs and even ITAR and EAR, then you're basically headed for trouble. And the FAA, anything that is certified by the FAA is, generally speaking, recognised globally. There are obviously a few issues with EASA certification, but keeping an eye on what's happening in the US is essential for the rest of the industry. But what I would say is, I guess innovation still happens outside of the US, and there are some really great ideas, but the US technology is often core to that anyway. And so if you don't go and have a presence in the US, then it's going to make it much more difficult to commercialize your technology globally. That's certainly our experience, and something that, we've got a footprint in the US, a couple of people working there, and our plan is to grow in the US ourselves for that very reason.
Wonderful, Michael. Thank you very much. And it's keen to recognize that while we might be focused on the integrated platform or the integrated system, you are right in that central to all of that are technologies that are developed in the West and in the United States. And this goes back to a comment that came out earlier from Christian and David and Robin, and that is, it's important to protect those technologies. So moving quickly and decidedly with security is going to be a key element as we go forward. Luke, if I could talk for a minute, Joby Aviation is a privately held company with significant US government interactions. What is Joby's relationship with the federal government, and how did this come about?
Yeah, thanks, Victor. And first, just commenting on Steve's comments about the integration with NASA, being part of the federal government for sure. think, we've got deep partnerships with NASA, and, they've been absolutely essential with getting us to where we are. And we look forward to working with them in the future as well. And I think most folks think, NASA is just about space and launching rockets, but it's actually, very vital to how we integrate hundreds, if not thousands of, both piloted and unmanned electric aircraft into the National Airspace System in the future here. But Joby's relationships with the federal government have been over the last decade. Since our team has been at the forefront of electric aviation, our engineers from the very beginning have contributed work to a number of pioneering electric aviation airplanes, including NASA's X-57 at Maxwell, their Leap Tech distributed electric propulsion. And for the past 6 years, we've been very 100% focused on developing this new certified piloted electric aircraft, again, that you see over my shoulder here. And, essential to this and the development, we realized that there's a partnership that's been needed with the DoD and the broader military and the federal government. And the military has had a long history of collaborating with American companies on the cutting edge of technological innovation to learn more and leverage these new capabilities. So we partnered with, at the earlier days, Defense Innovation Unit, which has offices in Mountain View, California, Austin, and Boston. And so they've provided us with insights, but more importantly, areas to test and expand our capabilities for the aircraft. As we look forward, we're continuing these developments. I'll talk a little bit more about our more recent relationship with the Air Force and the Agility Prime Office. But the federal government has been key, and we've walked hand in hand with them because they know we are moving at a pace that most federal government agencies and big prime contractors can simply not move as fast. So we're providing flight test data and insights in what it takes to bring revolutionary technology to the federal government for use.
Luke, thank you very much. Partnering with the federal government at this stage seems to be key, and very, very pleased to hear about the agenda and the progress that you're making. Steve, a question for you. We just heard about the Joby relationship with the government. When it comes to policy, government plays a key role in moving advanced air mobility forward. Given your experience, what are the policy challenges, not only for advanced air mobility, but urban air mobility in particular?
Yeah, that in itself is going to be quite a large challenge, since the UAM relies
in 2 minutes, Steve.
In 2 minutes. Okay, well, in 2 minutes or less, the things of obviously taking a integrated or a very sequential approach to getting things done. This isn't all inclusive, but there are about a dozen or so really top challenges. But some of the ones I think that are really critical are air traffic control and the infrastructure, which you mentioned earlier. Is, there's a lot of helipads, but you just can't go fly on any helipad that you want because a lot of them are privately owned. But also the other element of cost and accessibility, of how do you get access to these? How do those things become access to everyone else? If you get from a flying car that costs you around $300K and insurance about 60 grand a year, where's the cost relative? You're not going to be able to fly like you would with an Uber. It's not going to cost you what it would cost on an Uber to go from point A to point B. And I think one of the other things, one of the other top elements that's part of this is, and it's not a sexy part of it, it's the safety. Safety is going to be key to all these operations and types of things, whether it's urban or out in where it might be, because it's one of the biggest obstacles that can delay large scale development of the urban air transportation. And I think if we don't get it right and we mess it up, it's going to put this off for decades. So safety is going to be very critical in this whole element of urban air mobility.
Steve, thank you very, very much for that. And, you know, when it comes to safety, we think about not only NASA, but we think about the FAA, and we think about the pilot and the team in the cockpit that's flying. And that brings me to a question for Michael about the platform and the technologies associated with advanced air mobility and urban air mobility role in the choices that folks in this industry make. Now, I know that Skybase has gone away from small drones to large drones, upgrading existing airplanes into optionally piloted aircraft. Why is Skybase moving in this direction?
Yeah, following on from, I guess, what Steve said again about safety as well, we learned some very painful lessons with drones less than 55 pounds. We found them to be, you know, there's this constant balance between what you're trying to do with the small drone and the amount of, I guess, safety systems that have gone into it, and the commercial drivers. So it's the margins just aren't there. And so we, I guess, pivoted to working, instead of trying to get drones to fly like airplanes, we thought, well, let's get airplanes to fly like drones. And that was a really, really good decision, both commercially and from a technology sense, because the way that the regulations currently are at the moment is built on a long legacy of safety and learning over time. And so you effectively inherit that. You get that uplift, say, for example, with a Part 23 aircraft that's already been certified, you get that uplift where you don't get that with small drones. There's some fantastic technology in small drones, and they've definitely got their place in the market, particularly if you're able to scale your operation. And there are a few really good examples of that, but there are only a few good examples of that. Whereas you look at, I guess, the history of manned aviation and what we do with existing aircraft, particularly in the larger categories, doing that with an unmanned system and starting from the ground up, that would take decades and decades of work, because we're certifying aircraft into new categories. So yeah, we looked at, I guess, the landscape and then made that decision, and that's proven to be a very good one.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Steve, thoughts on Michael's comments?
You know, he's got very valid points, and it's this air mobility, the whole thing. If you look at the whole concept and what's behind it, is a very complex, multifaceted problem that we need to deal with, and a lot of issues and concerns from anywhere from what's FAA's role in this, the way that things are currently being done, that FAA does with current aircraft that are flying, may not fit directly into what we're doing now. So they're going to have to change the rules and regulations to fit this new technology development that's coming into place. So there's some real situations that are going to be a little difficult to deal with. Of how do you deal with airworthiness? You know, who certifies the airplanes and the aircraft, and how is that written off from anywhere from, you know, the mechanisms of certifying autonomous flight, you know, and then how do you, and then the various detect, see, and avoid type of activities, and what are the different operating rules, and what's the operational oversight. So there's a lot of things that are involved with the whole activity and dealing with what they're trying to work in. And I think what we've got is people are trying to be careful. They're trying to take incremental steps. But I think it's one of those things of going, you know, it's trying to do a whole new technology that nobody's done before, and trying to put that into place. I think the technology is fantastic. I hope it turns into something that we can all use and benefit from. But again, it's one of those things that we haven't done, and now we're trying to do it, and we're also we're plowing new ground. And so, you know, where are the rocks? that are hitting on the ground. And so we're all trying to work on it and make it, have it all come back together. But you know, it is a very challenging situation that people are dealing with. And of course, you know, the negative part of it is you always got people who are armchair quarterbacks that see 2020, you know, that what you should have done, but they weren't around to help you out with all these elements until it's already done. So yeah, you know, I give them all the credit in the world to trying to do this, and they're trying to figure out what they don't know, and hopefully it all works out. But you know, Michael's really very good. He's got a lot of background, a lot of flight background, so he gets it, and that's the kind of people you need in this business.
And can I just jump in there? And thanks very much. Appreciate that, Steve. It's also someone, you know, looking what Luke's doing with Joby there. Having aviation professionals in unmanned aviation is really essential to elevate the industry from, you know, certainly over the last sort of 8 years, it's been very technology focused. And as I kind of joke, is you've got your t-shirt wearers, your technology folk, which do a great job at going fast and breaking stuff. And then you've got your collar wearers, your aviation professionals that can work with the regulator. And being able to get that mix right is how we're going to lift the industry up. And you need the people that can think differently, like classic technologists, and then you need the people that can bring all of that aviation history, particularly from manned aviation, to bring it into the unmanned space. That doesn't mean we want to slow down the industry. It just means we need to do it in a very methodical build-up approach, as opposed to go fast and break stuff.
Absolutely. And that leads us right into our next discussion for Luke. And what we're really interested in here is one of the programs that was mentioned earlier, and one of the programs that the government has that will allow you to find the rocks and get around them. Okay. And we'd love to hear your discussion about Air Force's Agility Prime, and how a bit about Agility Prime and Joby's relationship to this program.
Yeah, thanks. And I think it's actually a perfect segue as we're talking about the smaller drones, because that's where I think it really got there. But you have to look even further back in history to see how we got here. And I think it starts really with, you know, innovation in the government when the Russians beat us to space in 1957 by launching Sputnik. You saw this from the US. Well, I wasn't alive, but you saw us on the innovation side, looking back at history where, you know, somebody else beat us to a technology. So the US, after Sputnik was launched, had a lot of catching up to do. So there was a lot of funding that got poured into various programs through the following decades. Well, then if you fast forward a little bit further, you see, you know, the same parallels with the small drone race. Well, very clearly the US government lost the small drone race to China. So very similar to how the Russians beat us to space. China beat us to the small drone race, where you still have a company like DJI that has, I think, over 80% of the market share for that. So that right there, you know, caused the U.S. government in its current day to spend a bunch of money on the small drone initiative. And you see that with the FAA's integration pilot program that just went through the last couple of years of trying to integrate drones in the national airspace. And I think that is continuing on. To the work that NASA is doing as well, to how to integrate a lot of electric and small drone aircraft into the national airspace system. So with Agility Prime specifically, I think you had some key visionaries that saw the history of Sputnik, saw the history of the small drone race, and then realized, like, hey, with electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft like Joby has, and a various bunch of other great companies, we have to de-risk this, meaning we don't want electric aircraft manufacturers to go overseas and have the US lose this innovation, because the DoD knows that once you start talking about very efficient, very fast, and very quiet electric aircraft, that there are DoD applications for that. So they want that market to remain on the U.S. So Dr. Will Roper started the Agility Prime program, and working with folks like the Air Force Research Laboratory and General Heather Pringle and Colonel Nate Diller created this Agility Prime program, which it's really a competition, or an air race as they call it, to give small amounts of funding to electric aircraft manufacturers to see who has the latest and greatest technology, and help developers create the products for civilian purposes, because they know that a lot of the risk comes when you have to create a military variant of a product. A military variant of a product does not always fit on the commercial side. But the opposite is somewhat true, where if you get a product like Joby's aircraft that you see behind me to commercial certification, there will be government benefits to that, because it unlocks the ability to use the aircraft for more use cases than just a military use case for it. So the Agility Prime office has had very successful funding, working with, I think, dozens, if not hundreds of various manufacturers, not just full electric aircraft, but all the way through the supply chain, and incentivize them to work with the government to get to a commercial product for it. So we're very excited. We think the collaboration has been fantastic, and we look forward to years of success with the Agility Prime office under the Air Force Research Laboratory with the Air Force.
Luke, thank you very much. That's a prime example that lets folks know that the government is stepping up. So not only do we have AFWorks, but X-Tech for the Army and Naval X for the Navy, and a program out of the Marine Corps. So if you're interested in developing technology, dual use, look to those programs, find out where they are in their application stage, and begin to partner with the federal government through all those activities. Now, before I get to my next question, it's going to be safety, and I'm going to start with Steve on that, but I want a round robin here on safety, because safety is everybody's business. But I want to also alert you that after that, I'm going to ask you a question that Michael raised earlier in our discussions about COVID-19 and how that pandemic drove a prime environment, okay, for the development of autonomous and automated vehicles. So with that in mind, put that on the back burner for now, but let's talk about safety. Steve, safety is key. You've alluded to it earlier. And I know that you partner with the aviation partners with FAA, but NASA plays a big role in that. Let's talk about safety.
Well, it's not one of the most sexy things to talk about, because it's usually it's not as pretty as flying airplanes, and I fully get it. And it's one of those unnecessary evils that you have to deal with. But as with any new technology or systems, there are challenges that need to be overcome. And with this urban air mobility, the safety of the eVTOL, electric vertical takeoff and landing technology needs to be proven for the public. So it's going to take some time. It's going to take some testing. But as Luke identified too earlier, is also one of the things in safety is also the noise elements of it when you're dealing around public type places. And so while the air travel does have a much lower accident rate than road travel, which it does, there are so many other risks that are involved. And, the air traffic is much more heavily regulated than road traffic. So there are a lot of facets to this whole thing, meaning that the policies and the regulations all need to be ironed out and test before this type of transportation can be opened up to the public. So it's like any technology. You can go back and look at it. It takes a while, and when you're pushing limits and boundaries of things that we know, but what are the things that we don't know of flying in, especially in public areas. So now you're dealing with public policy issues. So everybody has a hand in it, and there will be those who are very, very behind it, and then there will be those who don't, you know. And unfortunately, the guidelines, FAA guidelines for this haven't been fully established for the safe, efficient use and preservation of navigating these types of aircrafts around, you know, for construction and activation of airports. But also it's one of the things of, without the presence of a pilot, I'm kind of a little bit from, I get the technology, I think it's really neat, but I'm kind of old school. I like a little warm pink body in the front, with real-time activity instead of looking through a camera or hoping for an autonomous. So perhaps maybe artificial intelligence will kick in and help us out a lot in that too, as that starts to evolve. But safety is not a pretty thing. It's usually very negative because it seems to stop progress. But on the other hand, it could save, well, it's along the lines, safety can't tell you what they prevented, but they can sure tell you what they missed. So it's safety is not a pretty thing. And I get it, but it's an unnecessary evil that needs to be part of the whole overarching element of this whole technology.
Steve, thank you very much, and couldn't agree with you more about safety being necessary. And as one who's looked to the safety mechanisms a time or two to pull the fat out of the fire, I consider it a necessary evil. So I'm very happy to have him. I'm going to jump out of order here. Luke, your thoughts on safety and how you think about it at Joby.
Yeah, thanks very much. And without a doubt, safety is priority number one for Joby, just hands down, because we know at the scale at which we intend to operate, you have to have first and foremost a robust safety infrastructure. That comes from very early days to carrying it on into the future. And you look at what the current Part 135 rules are for the on-demand aviation, and that's the rule set that we intend to operate on, where as it's written now, it is not required to have a safety management system, but voluntarily doing that, which Joby intends to do and encourage other operators to do as well, provides a layer of safety that you don't often see right now with Part 135 operators. So without a doubt, we are building out a tremendous safety team and put a lot of effort into this. And what is also important too, and Steve, you hit on, I think Michael, you did as well, is the vehicles that are operating now give us a unique opportunity in that there is a tremendous amount of data coming off the vehicle that you can analyze. Where before, it was very stick and rudder and didn't have the robustness to see where the failures are. So I think as an industry, we're progressing. You'll see, just dramatic improvements on the operations. I think it's also very important to look at the vehicles themselves, because there are a lot of misconceptions on, what does autonomous operate, or what do autonomous operations mean? And there's a lot of folks that think the vehicle that are being created are the same type of build as existing platforms, where you look at the redundancy in some of these vehicles where they're multi-rotors, there's distributed electric propulsion. So those concerns can start being peeled away when, if you have, failures in some systems. These vehicles are built to operate very safely, and they're designed to operate in urban environments and be their safety. Everything from the noise to the distributed electric propulsion design to the multi-rotor system allows you to operate safely. So I think we're at a very interesting time. Joby puts safety, very much at the forefront, and is the reason why our design is the way it's designed. So we have safe, efficient operations.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Michael, your thoughts on safety?
Yeah, it's actually in the Australian Air Force, it was the saying "mission first, safety always," and that's actually what we've been doing at Skybase as well. Our first document that we created for our company was actually the safety management system, and the safety management system has personally saved my life multiple times. It's such a great way to approach safety, and whether it's in manned or unmanned aviation, and it builds upon those 120 years of aviation history that we have, and it means that we can learn those lessons faster. And Luke's point about the data was a really, really good one. Typically speaking, it takes time to build lessons and corporate knowledge in aviation, and that's because it's been, as Steve said, one pink body up the front, a couple of a test pilot and a test engineer collecting the data, whereas now you can get so much more data, and so we can learn those lessons much faster and hopefully develop regulations from there.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. I want to touch on one more thing, and I'm going to go back to you, Luke, because of the private company, the funded private company that Joby is. We've often heard people say that really the only way to get safety is through culture, company culture. Can you talk about how you approach that at Joby?
Yeah, and the Joby culture is a very special one indeed, and it was created with a mission of not building one aircraft, but hundreds and thousands of aircraft, and letting people across the globe experience this dream of flight, if you will. So, with that, we knew that safety has to be integrated into everything we do in the cultural side. And culture is one of those soft skills, but very important, where you can't force a culture, and you can't, sometimes, write it down and measure it through, very specific data at some points, but it comes from the leadership down, and that's what I'm a firm believer in. And then that sets the tone. So bringing up safety and promoting a culture of being able to voice concerns and submit interesting designs and methods to improve safety mechanisms. And it just comes through the informal. When you're done flight testing, you're gathered around the group and you're eating dinner, talking about safety and promoting that. And it's one of the pillars of it, is that promotion aspect and the culture aspect. So, so at Joby, we it is multiple times daily. It is in every part of our brief and presentations, everything from having safety moments to our group all hands. And it's a joy to see, because like Michael, same thing, echo the same thing, safety infrastructure has, saved my life as well, just from previous days. And we know that needs to carry on to the future for how we intend to operate.
Luke, absolutely. Thank you very much. Steve, I like the way you put it, in the sense that, the safety team can't tell you how much they prevented, but they sure can tell you what they missed. And it's so true, and that's what makes it sometimes so difficult for folks to see how important safety and safety culture is. Now let's pivot for just a minute, Michael, back to you on your thinking about how COVID was really a driver for this industry, and an opportunity here for folks in this industry. How about if you start us off on that discussion?
Yeah, one of the things that obviously, like many of us, we've got lots of, we either know or have in our families lots of pilots that are out of work at the moment. And it's basically changed our thinking on really the role of pilots in driving profitability for airlines or not. And there's, now that airlines are starting to kick back into gear, they're taking a really close look at, I guess, how it affects profitability, having those humans up the front. And do we need two of them, or do we need one of them? And the door has now been opened, thanks to COVID, for people to think differently about the industry. And if you think from a passenger's perspective, the psychology is going to take a long time to change. People are going to be a bit sensitive getting back into travel because people now haven't travelled for 14 months, and it's potentially going to be 6 months more before, or maybe even a year more before travel opens up. So you're going to have a lot of people where they are going to rely on that human interaction to feel safe travelling, but then because on the commercial side, the horse is already bolted here, and we're saying, oh, we don't actually necessarily need things to be the way that they were for us to go forwards commercially. So we've got this really interesting time where it's a great time for companies like Joby to say, well, everything's disrupted anyway, let's go and disrupt it a bit more. That's certainly my perspective anyway.
Okay, super. Steve, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think Michael's right on target there. I think it provided some additional opportunities that probably wouldn't have presented themselves that they would in the past, because people in most cases like to do the same old thing the same old way. And it requires people like Michael and Luke to push the boundaries and open it up and show that this is a feasible technology to do. But I agree with Michael, there's a big psychology issue. And, the people are stuck on the way that things are. And then when you have change, people are somewhat adverse to change. People will tell you all the things that need to be changed, except for the stuff that they do. So on the other hand, it's I think there's this opportunity to be able to expand on that a little bit. But I going back, kind of reversing here on you a little bit on the safety culture type of thing. I think that's great that they bring it in. I think most companies try to do that. But I think one of there's, from my experience being on accident boards, there seems to be a common thread that kind of fits into most accidents is budget pressure, schedule pressure, and political pressure. So that can have an influence on the culture because risks have a tendency to be taken, based on budget or schedule. So I think the COVID, back to the COVID thing, I think there's I think it did provide a lot of opportunities everywhere to have an opportunity to be able to have some growth and be able to press forward with us. So I think it's great. I agree with Michael.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. I'm going to ask Michael another thought that focuses on regulations here. And we know that regulations and the government are going to be key to moving this industry forward, as we heard in our fireside chat, and as we've alluded to here. I know you have thoughts on why performance or risk-based regulations can be a double-edged sword for a nascent industry like autonomous aviation. Would you share your thinking here and let us have some insight and discussion?
Yeah, sure. So something that Luke touched on about, I guess, all the things that Joby is discovering with electric aircraft. Let's look at just electric aircraft for a moment. There are no existing regulations to deal with that. So that's just one hurdle that Joby needs to jump. And, they're jumping it very well. But that information is also not public. And this is the big difference between, I guess, prescriptive regulation and performance-based regulation. Prescriptive regulation is something that's been built upon over time. It's been paid for in blood. It's, for example, why in a piston aircraft you need 2 spark plugs, or if you're flying IFR, you need 2 independent sources of attitude to fly safely. And it's very easy to trace why those regulations exist, because they're built upon accidents that have occurred and incidents. In the instance of, performance-based or objective-based regulation, which is where the unmanned aviation industry is at the moment, it's definitely designed to help innovation, to help companies like ours and Joby and all of the others in sort of new aviation push the boundaries. But ironically, it can actually stifle innovation because you don't know where you don't fully know the rules. It's a little bit like going out and playing gridiron and saying, you've got to keep the ball within the boundary lines and get it over the goal line. And that's it. How many team members can you have? Are you able to, how long does the game go for? Can you have different technology to help you get the ball over the line? So having prescriptive rules can actually provide a framework for people to do workarounds. And then when incidents occur, and it's aviation incidents will occur and accidents will occur, there's that safety debriefing, and then the whole industry can learn, because they're like, oh, they didn't comply with this particular rule part, or that particular rule part wasn't adequate. Whereas with performance-based regulation, it's all based upon safety cases, and they are individually provided to the regulator to get the approvals to go and fly, and they're not made public. So that means that the industry can't actually learn collectively, which has been how aviation is the safest industry on the planet, is the fact that we've been able to learn from these accidents, and prescriptive regulation has helped drive that. Countering that, though, you've got Agility Prime, and that's another, I guess, bringing back to my first point about why I believe that the US is still going to be the nexus and the pinnacle for this. Having those kind of things in the absence of regulation, or even in a performance-based regulation, going into the DoD and working with them, building up that history so that you can understand what the policies should be in the future, that's very, very sensible. And so I guess you've got these competing needs between providing a framework that you can innovate around, or providing less framework that you can innovate and kind of do what you want, but then how do you get certified? So it's a juggling act.
Absolutely, Michael. Thank you very much. Luke, you're in the middle of all this as the government operations lead for Joby. Tell us what you think.
Yeah, I think tremendous points, and what it means for Joby is kind of leading on what Michael said is, but it's also important to know we're taking a crawl, walk, run approach to all of this. Very deliberately. Obviously, Joby is very involved with conversations with the FAA multiple times daily. As it pertains to how are we certifying this aircraft this airplane that's flying behind me. But the work we've been doing with the Air Force, and to get our airworthiness approval last year, we're the first electric aircraft company to get that. And what does that mean? Is, well, the Air Force did over months and months, working hand in hand with us, very deep dive into every component on the aircraft, and did a review for us that allowed us to really test and push the limits of our aircraft under the watch of the Air Force, because part of this whole thing is learning together. We know that it takes a partnership with the government to expand our testing capabilities, and at the same time informing them of what it takes to build an aircraft, what it takes to fly an aircraft, like what Joby is building. So this airworthiness approval for us allowed us to get a check in the system, because it was one of the first times that we had an external agency, come and really get into the details of our aircraft outside of what we do already with the FAA. So looking forward to that, we are testing in a very constrained environment with the DoD, but it allows us to push very thoughtfully the boundaries and expand our testing capabilities to get us to the commercial certification for us. Because again, that is the goal of the Agility Prime program, is to get manufacturers like Joby to commercial certification by taking this very deliberate approach. And they know that the airworthiness approval from the military does mean something in the eyes of the FAA and the general public, and we look forward to more success in the near term as well, with other announcements yet to come.
Super. Thank you very much, Luke. Could you take just a minute and tell us what is an airworthiness certificate?
Well, and very important is to delineate is this is an airworthiness approval from the DoD. So essentially for what the Air Force is working with us for our test program, they looked and said, here's the objectives of the test program. Are they, the Air Force, comfortable with the aircraft and its current configuration and design and safety factors to allow those tests? Again, it's our commercial testing that we're doing, but they reviewed our capabilities and determined that the Joby's aircraft is safe and can meet the requirements. That'll ensure that there is no undue risk put on the program for what the Air Force is asking in terms of data for us to send them for. So that's our airworthiness approval, and very happy. I think Dr. Will Roper announced that back in December with the Agility Prime Office and AFWorks and AFRL. So we're very proud and happy to be the first company to get that, and like I said, look forward to some more near-term success in that realm as it pertains to airworthiness with the DoD.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Michael, I know that you have an airworthiness certificate. Now, I have to say that no one in my family does. Okay, but in point of fact, tell us about your certificate.
Yeah, well, I don't have it sitting behind me because it's 2 a.m. here and I'm at home. Yeah, we do have an airworthiness certificate. So, but to be perfectly honest, it's an experimental certificate of airworthiness, and this is one of the things that Americans are brilliant at marketing, and this is something that the rest of the world doesn't do as well as Americans, is marketing. And it doesn't necessarily matter if you've got the best product; it needs to be the best marketed product, and that's the truth. And this is why there are fantastic products that come out of the US, but they're not necessarily the best products, they're the best marketed ones. But with the certificate of airworthiness, that's very similar to I guess what Joby has experienced, having the regulator come in and check over our systems and make sure that the aircraft is airworthy, and that means that it effectively complies with what regulations they can find. So we're modifying a Part 23 aircraft, so we have to comply with all of the existing Part 23 rules for that aircraft. And then they, for the areas where there are no rules for what we're doing, then it's all based on those safety cases for the performance-based regulation. And that's on an agreement basis. So to get to going out of an experimental certificate of airworthiness into a full type certificate for the aircraft, or a supplemental type certificate, requires complying with something. You have to comply with either existing regulations, or you have to comply with, I guess, the certification basis or the safety case that you've provided to the regulator. So that delta there is really where all of the companies are working with the regulators to go, okay, well, how much does that delta actually have to be for us to get that next level of certification, to get that next airworthiness certificate? Because it's those airworthiness certificates, whether it's a military airworthiness certificate or a civil one, that's actually what's valuable, because we're all chasing those bits of paper, and the weight of the paperwork has to at least equal the weight of the aircraft in aviation. So yeah, all of us are chasing those bits of paper.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to remember that standard. We're just about out of time, so very quickly, I'd like to ask our panelists for quick closing remarks. Steve Schmidt, NASA executive, could you lead us off?
Oh yeah, I think this was fabulous. I think we unfortunately we only have an hour to do this. I think we could probably spend days talking about this and the various aspects. Like I say, it's a very complex and multifaceted problem, and in this technology of trying to anywhere from getting certifications, whether they're military or commercial, from the safety regulations, you can see that there are a lot of things that have to be dealt with, and I think that just you give an example here with Luke and Michael that they're doing a very good job of pursuing this, and then they're finding out where those rocks are underneath the ground level as they hit them. So it's against one of those unknown unknowns that you don't know about. So again, I give these two individuals great kudos for the effort and the work that they're doing, and Luke getting the certificate from the Air Force is a great start.
Wonderful, Steve. Thank you so much. Luke Fischer, Government Operations Lead for Joby, your final comments.
Yeah, I'll keep it short. Yeah, it's been an absolute privilege, and I think one of the themes here was how both the private sector and the federal government work together to create a very robust product. But what I look forward to the most is we're going to see the technology improve, the markets mature, but the one goal in mind is in improving people's lives and saving people's lives and saving people time as we go through scale with these various products. Very much looking forward to that in the future, and very much appreciate the time here with the group.
Thank you very much. Michael Reed from New Zealand, Skybase founder and CEO.
Thank you very much. It's been, as Luke said, great privilege to be here and support what, America's future. We want to be part of America's future the same way that all of you do. And it's been a fascinating discussion. And I personally would like to stay up for the rest of the night talking about it. I find it very, very interesting. So thank you very much, Victor. Appreciate that.
Pleasure to have you all. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to our attendees. And I'd like to turn it over now back to David Hamilton so that he can move us forward to the rest of the program. David, thank you so much. Scott, thank you so much. Back to you.
Let me say on behalf of David, thank you, Dr. Fishman. You are outstanding. And your trio of moderators, or I guess panelists, really, that was really fascinating. All three were great. And I can't believe New Zealand, for Pete's sake. Now, what time is it in New Zealand? Where are we? We were trying to figure that out.
We've got 2 a.m. So
2 a.m. on Wednesday morning?
He wins a prize.
On Thursday morning.
Thursday. That's right. You're ahead of us. That's right. You're ahead of us. Yeah. Well, tell you what, whether it was New Zealand or someplace here in the good old US of A, Dr. Fishman and his incredible trio, you all were outstanding. Thank you so much. Be strong, stay safe, and we hope to see you down the road.
Absolutely. Thank you. Take care.